Thank you for joining us for AT&T's TIP program, engaging over 130,000 employees to drive new products, services, and businesses, featuring Brett Havens, Director of Innovation for AT&T's Ecosystem and Innovation. I'm Allie Klein, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. If at any time you have a question, please feel free to ask it using the chat or question function within GoToWebinar. You can also interact with our team via social media by tweeting @Mindjet and using the hashtag Innovation Café. Following the presentation, we're going to have a 10 to 15-minute Q&A period, and we'll answer your questions at that time. But feel free to ask them using the chat and question function if need be. We'll also be recording the webinar, which will be available to view on our website. With that, I'd like to go in and give you a little bit more details about our speaker, Brett Havens. So Brett Havens is the Director of Innovation for AT&T's Ecosystem and Innovation organization, leading initiatives designed to source ideas for AT&T's internal innovation venture fund. In support of AT&T's innovation efforts, Brett leads AT&T's crowdsourcing and innovation platform, the Innovation Pipeline, also known as TIP. TIP empowers AT&T's global workforce to innovate, collaborate, and compete to develop concepts that will become future products, services, and businesses. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Brett to start his presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. Well, as Allie mentioned, Brett Havens, Director of Innovation for AT&T, and we're going to be talking today about TIP, or the Innovation Pipeline. Now, this is a subject that I think you'll find as we go through this I'm very passionate about, and always excited to talk with folks about what we've done, where we've been, and kind of where we're going. And so with that in mind, let me give you an idea of what we're going to talk about this afternoon. So number one, we're going to start with a little bit about where we began as a program. And folks ask me a lot of times outside the company, how'd you guys get going? What sorts of things did you think about? How did you structure things? What were some of the decisions you made? And what was the spark that really helped you guys get moving? And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that happened. Then we're going to jump into what our journey really looked like along the way. And we'll take a look at the idea flow into the platform over time as kind of a backdrop. But along the way, I want to point out some of the decisions we made, some of the things that we did or changed that really helped us propel ourselves forward to kind of the next level each time. After that, we're going to go a little bit deeper and get a little bit more specific about what our process looks like, the different mechanisms we use to get ideas, and what we do with them once we get them. Then I'd like to take a few minutes and share some lessons learned. This is another thing folks ask a lot externally. What did you learn from the process? What are some tidbits that you think you should share with some folks to who might be going down the same journey or perhaps already there and maybe running into some of the same things? And then lastly, we'll finish up with a few success stories. And to preface the success stories by saying that these are selected to kind of illustrate the process. These are all things that are already external, which means you can go ahead and go out and read about them and look them up. There's lots and lots and lots more, but I think these ones will make the most sense to you as a way to understand how this process has been really beneficial for us. So with that as kind of a backdrop, let's go ahead and jump into it. So we're going to start with our beginning, how we kind of got going. And I would tell you that TIP was basically the answer to a very simple question. That question being, can we tap into the collective wisdom of our people to be a more innovative company? And I think it goes without saying the answer is yes, but that leads to the second question, which is, that's great, how exactly do we do that? Some number of years ago, a man by the name of John Donovan came to AT&T to be our Chief Technology Officer. And when John got here, one of the areas of the business that he was responsible for was our AT&T Labs organization. And those of you that are familiar with AT&T Labs, or you'll hear me slip up every now and then and call it Bell Labs, to say that they've been successful is an understatement. 8 Nobel Prizes in the history of that organization. That alone is really a stat that I'm not sure how you ever beat it. But on top of that, if you think about the things that AT&T Labs or Bell Labs created over their time with us, it's mind-boggling. I mean, these are the things that are the basic building blocks of technology that we use today. somewhere along the way when you get a minute, go look that up. I won't spend time on it today, but it's mind-boggling the number of things that have come from that organization. And so with that as a backdrop, you have this really innovative, forward-looking organization that's had a tremendous amount of success. And when John came to AT&T, you have that to begin with, right? So what a tremendous thing to start off with something so innovative right there in your pocket. But what John asked was, how do we answer this other question? How do we really tap into the resources, the people, the assets we have as a company and get even more innovative? And so he got together a group of folks from around the company and created this group referred to as the Technology Council, or the Tech Council for short. And it was a group of folks who were largely non-executive. And he had a series of discussions with them to say, hey, you represent different parts of our business, different types of jobs. What do you think is the trick? What do we need to do to make this happen? And out of that series of conversations came this notion that we should create TIP. We need a platform where people can ideate, can collaborate, can help us figure out what sorts of things we ought to pursue as a company. And so in going down that road, on the right here, share with you some of the guiding principles that we've had since those early days when it comes to that platform. So number one, it needed to be something that was always on, meaning if we do an event to collect ideas, great, but there should always be a time and place where someone can go and share an idea. So it doesn't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning here or halfway around the world, there should be a place where someone can share one of those ideas as they come up with them. Geographically agnostic, in other words, we're not going to build a platform for the Americas and have a completely separate platform for EMEA or another part of the world. Culturally agnostic as well, and that goes with the geography. That's a huge advantage. Some of you who can, I'll leave this to your own imagination, but you can think of products that have been named over the years that have gained notoriety because in one language they meant one thing, and in another language they meant something completely different. And to be able to combine folks who are going to have different cultural backgrounds is a real asset for the platform. Number 3, no hierarchy. Job level doesn't matter. And that's something that today in the platform we kind of take for granted, to be honest. But when this was being developed, there was an open question about how do you handle that? And thankfully, I'm glad that we went down the road of saying that everyone's equal in the platform. It doesn't matter if you're a vice president or senior vice president or if you're a frontline employee. It doesn't matter if you've been here 1 day or 20 years. Everyone has an equal ability to share their thoughts and insights on where we should go as a company. And we've continued that today. Open feedback is a hallmark, and fast win, fast fail, and I'll spend some more time on that a little bit later. In terms of benefits for us, this is all pretty obvious, but we are an enormous company. That goes without saying. And so anytime you can help a large company move in a way that's a bit more agile, that's an absolutely positive benefit of that, and this platform's done that for us. Also, as we move along, and I'll talk about this more in a bit, being able to have a funding model that can put a little bit of resources behind the projects that come out of this platform. You can't ever guarantee with a proof of concept that something's going to work for sure, but you can de-risk the idea. You can take some of the risk out of it. You can try some things, test some things. Try to make it so that a business unit that might adopt it feels comfortable. If there's a reasonable chance this might work, and if we can do that, then that makes it much more likely for us to be able to do something with everything. And then the bottom bullet, to be honest, probably the biggest benefit we've had, which is cultivating an innovative culture. If you follow along in the press, AT&T, the last handful of years, 4 or 5 or 6 years, we started with TIP. It's about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, we started with TIP. Since then, there's been a lot of additional innovation elements that our company has developed and brought to bear in conjunction with TIP. So Foundries, I'm sure you've all heard of. If you haven't, go look into that. I won't spend time on it today. But those are physical places where we take ideas from TIP and from other places and develop them, turn them into prototypes and projects, and eventually launch them externally. We use those facilities also to interact with third parties, whether they be startups or other large companies like ourselves. And And then just recently, earlier this year, we started the AT&T Drive Studio. Its express purpose is, think of it kind of like a foundry, but it's dedicated specifically to connected cars with our automotive partners. And so over the last few years, we've gone beyond just, how do we get the ideas, but how do we really turn them into something? All right, so now let me take a little bit of time and talk about our journey and how we kind of got there. So I mentioned that we started about 5 years ago, and we've been through a lot of things since then. This blue graph that's going to start to appear down here. So this is the ideas that we see in the platform, and we'll make our first starting point May of '09. That was when TIP was born, more or less. We launched the platform available to all of our employees, and by all of our employees, I mean that includes our bargain for employees. And that's a decision maybe I should mention that as a company, we have a very, very large bargain for workforce. It's an enormous chunk of our population. And the vast majority of our bargain for employees are in positions that are frontline facing. And so I think it goes without saying that you've got a unique set of perspectives with that population within our company. And to not include them might mean that we don't get a full range of perspectives about what we ought to do. And so we worked out a way in which we could combine our management employees and our bargain for employees in one platform, regardless of where they were at in the company. And so we did that from the beginning. And so when TIP was born, it was live to everyone, both in the U.S. and globally. Within about a month, we picked up our 1,000th member. So it might sound like a lot of people. I guess it kind of is, but in the context of a company that's got 200,000+ people, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. And those of you that have started programs or done things like this know that those early months, maybe even that first year, it can be a little tenuous. You're not sure, is this going to work? Is it going to have legs? Is it a fad, or are we going to try this for a little while? Everybody's going to think it's pretty cool, and then people are going to move on to the next cool thing. And so while that was really cool, who knows what's going to happen after that, right? So we kept plugging away. A few months after that, we crossed the 1,000 mark on ideas. So we had about 1,000 ideas. So okay, now we've got 1,000 members, 1,000 ideas. Nice round numbers, but again, in a company this large, it's still kind of an experiment, to be honest. And then some interesting things started happening. The following month, in September, we had an opportunity to expand the types of ideas that we were processing as a platform. So initially, when we launched, we began with the revenue generation category. And as I talked with other folks at various companies around the world that do stuff like this, it seems common that that's kind of a typical way to start on the revenue side. And it makes sense why, right? Because most folks are being asked to, at some point, justify their value to the enterprise, whether it's a large company or a small company. Does the return on investment make sense? And it costs time, money, and resources to go down these roads. And so from a revenue generation standpoint, it allows programs to say, hey, we created this product, it generated X dollars in revenue for the company, which trickled down to Y in profit, and therefore, it makes sense to continue to do this. And we were no exception. We started that way as well. But pretty quickly, our IT organization started to see value in being able to use that same platform to collect ideas of an IT nature. And these are specifically things that would help the company improve internal IT systems and processes and technologies that we use as a company. And so unlike a lot of programs that I've run into, we didn't start in the IT organization. We added the IT organization later. We actually started in the intellectual property group under John Donovan when he came to AT&T. And so starting with this revenue piece, moving into this IT piece, we now have two different avenues that ideas can flow and two different groups that kind of have vested interest in the platform. And I would tell you that that's a really key thing in terms of adding stakeholders that have a vested interest in the platform continuing to be successful. At about that same time, and in part because we added a whole other category, we hit 10,000 members. And at 10,000, okay, this is starting to look like maybe there might be something here. We're continuing to add very, very rapidly. Then as we go into 2010, the curve really starts to bend upwards. And that was partially responsible or partially driven by the fact that we've begun to expand categories, but we also had a couple interesting things happen. In early 2010, we launched our first challenge, or in long form, we refer to them as executive challenges. Now, those of you that on the line that may have had some experience doing challenges within your own company, or at least are aware of the concept, the idea, 4 or 5 years ago, the idea of a challenge was still pretty new. There wasn't a lot of experience in how to do them inside of large enterprises. What kind of stakeholders are needed? What kind of process do you need? You know, asking the question sounds like the easy part, but it can also be very complicated. And getting it right can take time and a little bit of trial and error. And when you have a brand new platform, you kind of don't want to goof it up. So we took that first bold move into let's try to ask a challenge. Let's try to solve a particular business problem for the company. Again, less than a year after we've started, right? About that same time, we crossed the 20,000 member mark, and that's part of what made it such a good time to start asking challenges. You need enough people that you can get a meaningful representation of the company to be able to answer that question. A little while later, we had 5,000 ideas, and then again, something interesting happened. Our folks within the company who are responsible for the customer experience came to us and said, hey, is there a way that we could add a category on tips specifically for ideas to improve AT&T's customer experience? These could be improving processes in everything from retail stores to call centers, could be how our mobile applications work, could be all kinds of things. Anything that might make a customer happier, make the process more seamless, or we use the word effortless a lot inside AT&T. Anything that can make that process better fits into that category. And so now at this point, we've got a revenue category, an IT category, and a customer experience category, and you can see how that idea flow trend really starts to angle upwards, because the minute you add customer experience, you're now saying pretty much anything that's going to make a customer happy is fair game, and it's amazing the number of things people can think of, especially when, again, you've got all your frontline folks included in the process. That's a really critical piece to making that customer experience category work. We kept doing challenges, and within 7 or 8 months, we were up to about 10 of them. And at this point, I would say we were getting pretty good at it. I think we learned a lot. I think we learned that the question is probably the most important part of any of that process. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute when we talk about how ideas come into the platform. 10,000 ideas just before the end of the year. So we're a year and a half in, 10,000 ideas. We crossed the 20,000 number mark. We've got challenges going, and we've got 3 key categories that are bringing ideas in for us, and different stakeholders within the company that I think have a vested interest in it continuing to be successful. Just before the end of the year, we hit the 50,000 mark on people. At this point, I think it's fair to say this thing's here to stay. You know, along the way, you kind of wonder, but you've now got enough stakeholders, you've got enough members, ideas are starting to flow in very rapidly. It took a year, a little over a year to get that first 5,000 ideas. It took 4 months to get the next 5,000. So you're seeing that trend. In 2011, we continue doing challenges. We get up to our 20th challenge. A little while later, that year hit the 15,000 idea mark. 75,000 members at about the same time. So again, continuing to grow. And at this point, at 75,000 members, I mentioned AT&T has over 200,000 people. You're starting to get a pretty significant chunk of the employee base at the company. That's worth noting. We don't auto-enroll employees in TIP. It's entirely opt-in. So if an employee chooses not to participate in TIP, that's okay. We wouldn't count them in these numbers. These are only the people that have chosen to participate in TIP and have opted into the process and participated in the platform. So 75,000 people is an enormous chunk. At the very end of 2011, we added our last category, and this was the cost savings category. And our CFO organization saw what was happening with the other categories and really said, look, we're always looking for ways that we can make AT&T more nimble, more streamlined from a cost perspective, and we'd love to get feedback from people all over the world. Again, we have 75,000 people now, so it's fair to say there are folks participating in TIP from pretty much every part of the company, and in many cases, many parts of the world. And what better way to try to uncover really simple, easy things we could probably do to make ourselves more agile from a financial perspective than to ask everybody, hey, what do you see? And it could be as simple as maybe we're leaving the lights on at night in a network center somewhere, and there's really nobody working there. Maybe we need to change that. Maybe there's a piece of equipment somewhere that isn't needed anymore. Maybe we should sell it. Lots and lots of little things that 75,000 people can find can add up to an awful lot of value to an enterprise. And that's really why we went down that road. So we're really excited to add that category as well. And again, another team that has a stake in this platform continuing to grow. Into 2012, we're up to 40 challenges, 20,000 ideas. We crossed the 100,000 member mark around the middle of 2012. So we're getting pretty close to about half of the company participating in the platform. Again, opt-in, so that's 100,000 people that have said, I want to be part of this process. 2013, 110,000 folks. We're up to 50 challenges. The 25,000th idea comes a little bit later in that year. And we crossed the 120,000 member mark just before the year's out. And then 2014, we're only about halfway through the year, but I'll give you some of the highlights so far. In January, we redid TIP. We learned a lot over that first 5 years, 4.5 years, I guess, at that point. Our birthday was in May of this year at 5 years. And when you learn all the things we've learned, we really decided, look, we built a program around a platform for 4.5 years, and it was time to remold the platform to line up with the program. Because sometimes you find yourselves spending extra time or energy doing something we could probably automate or make easier or interface with the crowd better. And so we really took that opportunity to rethink everything we were doing. And I'll tell you a couple of things we changed as we get a little further in the talk here. 30,000 ideas we reached just recently, about a month and a half ago. Their 70th challenge just last month, and reached 130,000 members last month. So that's better than half of the company now that's opted into this platform and is participating in the platform. And you can see kind of the final numbers there, at least as of the end of last month. 130,000 folks, 31,000 ideas. In terms of members, I'd mentioned too, we're in over 50 countries. I don't have it on here, but over 50 countries around the world. So this isn't just a United States-based platform or even the Americas. 50 different countries with members means you have a tremendous diversity of both geographical perspectives, cultural perspectives, you name it, all being combined together to hopefully create the right products and services for the company. And that last little thing I mentioned there is that 44 million. So, and this is, we've talked about this a couple times in the past. This is a fairly recent number. So 44 million is the amount of money that, as we created an internal venture fund to back some of these projects. This is just seed funding. So this isn't go-to-market money. It would take a lot more than that for go-to-market money for sometimes even one thing. But 44 million represents the amount that we've committed to projects. 50,000 here, 100,000 there, whatever it takes to prove the concept out and get it to a point where it might make sense for a business unit to make it part of the plan of record and launch it commercially. So I hope that's helpful. I know it's a lot to look at, but folks ask a lot, how did you get there? What kinds of things did you do? What were some of the decisions you made along the way? And so I hope this gives you an idea of what that journey looked like for us. All right, so now let me jump a little into our process. So we're going to get a little bit more granular after kind of looking at this at a high level. And we'll talk a little bit about challenges. So there's two different ways, essentially, that we can bring ideas into the platform. Bring them in through challenges, or we can bring them through what we refer to as open tip, or essentially anything that's non-challenge. And we'll start with challenges because I think those are the things that, for us, help target ideas the best towards a particular problem. So here's how a challenge works. And you can see on the right here kind of a screenshot of what our platform looks like in terms of visual appeal. So number one, we issue a challenge. And that process of issuing a challenge is actually fairly involved. Number one, we're going to have a series of conversations with the executive team who has the particular problem to solve. And that conversation is going to hopefully lead to asking the crowd to solve a problem that's an immediate issue for that team, hopefully something that is a real business problem they're facing. And you need to have that conversation to really get down to the root cause, because oftentimes it takes a couple of rounds of discussion to kind of really get down to what's the real issue, right? It's sort of like asking, somebody who seems upset what's wrong, right? The first thing you get out is probably not what's really wrong. You kind of keep talking to them and digging a little bit until they finally tell you what's really going on. And in business situations like this, sometimes the surface problems, we can solve them. But what's really important is to solve those root causes. And so try to drill down and get the right question, a really meaty question that makes sense. And then formulating the question is critical. If you ask the question that's too broad, you're going to get things all over the map. If you ask it that's too narrow, you're going to get very few responses because it's going to limit people's creativity. There's a happy medium in there somewhere, and I would tell you it's much more an art than a science. And it's why we've gotten better and better at doing these over the number of years we've been doing them, because that challenge question, if it's right, has tremendous value. So folks are going to share ideas to that challenge. They're going to start to appear on this page that you can see here on the right. And the crowd is going to go through a process of collaboration on those ideas and rating the ideas. They're going to use a 1 to 5 star system to rate the ideas on a scale of 1 to 5. And that feedback and the votes that they're casting are going to determine whether or not those ideas can advance in the process. So the crowd has control entirely for the first portion of that challenge to determine what makes the most sense, what should advance, and what should get to the later stages. After the crowd is done going through that rating process, we do something called a challenge review, or in category sometimes we call it a category review. The challenge review is done by folks on our team or on other teams if it's a different category. And they're essentially going to take a look at the ideas and just make sure they make sense to be in the challenge. It's just kind of a sanity check just to make sure they make sense. Do they answer the question? Do they belong here? And if they don't, there may be a more appropriate place in the platform to kind of move them to so that they can live out in the right spot and compete in the right place. Once that's done, the ideas that remain, and typically it's all of them, if not almost all of them, are going to move on to pairwise voting. We refer to it as heads-up voting. That's just our methodology for it, or our terminology for it, rather. And so you'll see that on the graphic. But it's pairwise. It's which idea do you like better, idea A or idea B? That's worth noting that I mentioned we redid our platform about 9 months ago. And when we redid it, one of the things that we changed was we used to use a stock market mechanism to determine which ideas made the most sense at the end. And this was true for our platform for a long, long time. And we made a change away from that because although it was a really interesting way to allow people to choose the winners, people earned points through different actions and they invested in the ideas they liked the best. It's a neat methodology. And it might be right in the right environment. For us, what we learned over time was that it didn't resonate with a significant majority of our tip population, our tip members. And what they were really looking for was something simpler, easier to understand, and quicker. And so we made a change to pairwise, and we won't get into it today, but we've seen a tremendous increase in the amount of participation that we've gotten from folks in that process, which is exactly what we were looking for. So that was the right change for us to go to that pairwise methodology. At the end, there's some winners. So the crowd is going to choose the top 3 social winners, that's what we call them. And those 3 folks are going to receive some recognition on our site. They're going to receive a trophy from our team. And then the cash winners, those are the ones that are chosen by the executive. And again, top 3. And they don't have to be the same ones. In fact, oftentimes they're not. And those folks will receive a cash incentive and also some recognition on our site. And typically both will also get some recognition from the executive challenger. So potentially to have about 6 winners, assuming there's not crossover through each one of the challenge processes. The last thing that's going to happen is we're going to circle back and have a conversation with that challenge team, that executive challenge team. And we're going to say, hey, what do you think about these ideas? They're going to do some research, and they're going to determine if certain things that have come out of the challenge make sense to fund. Typically, the things that are the most interesting to the executive tend to be the ones that were selected as their winners. So that's a good place to start, but everything's fair game. So if there's more than just that seems particularly attractive to them and they want to find a way to move ahead with, we'll certainly have that discussion with them and try to figure out a way to help them that way. So we may assist with that from a funding perspective. They may be able to do it on their own. Regardless, this process has been tremendously successful for us, and the fact that we've done 70 of these things, believe me when I tell you we'd have given up on this a long time ago if it wasn't really, really important. So those are challenges. The other way that we can get ideas is through what we refer to as open tip, and that's just our way of referring to, if you have an idea at any time, tell us. You don't have to wait for a challenge or find one that fits the idea. You can give it to us at any time. And you can put it into any one of these 5 buckets. Now you're going to say, Brett, I thought you had 4 categories. How'd you end up with 5 buckets? And the reason is because when we went to our new version of our platform in January, I mentioned we learned a few things along the way, and one of the things we learned was that revenue ideas are not all equal. Some revenue-generating ideas are for things that are brand new products, brand new services, brand new businesses. It's a whole different thing than an idea that improves an existing product, service, or business, right? Separating the incremental from the transformative. From a crowd perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense, or it isn't really very fair to have them compete against one another, because you're asking people to choose between maybe $1 billion business and a $2 million incremental addition, right? They're probably going to choose the $1 billion thing. And so from a competition standpoint, it makes sense for the crowd. It also makes sense for us as a group because those are totally different paths those ideas need to go down. If we're going to do something entirely new from a resource perspective, a funding perspective, we may even need to build out a whole new business unit. And so the level of commitment there is entirely different. Those ideas need to be researched differently and prepared differently. So we split that revenue category into 2 pieces, and we call them start it and grow it. Start it for the things that are brand new, grow it for the things that improve existing products and services. And then you'll also see the other 3 categories there that we continue to have: cost savings, customer experience, and IT. So they can share an idea at any time, and the process works like this. We start a season. In our case, seasons are typically about 90 days. We used to follow the calendar quarters when we did them. We've changed that a little bit, kind of pushed it back a little, just in the interest of not having seasons end in the middle of holidays and stuff like that. So a season is about 90 days. There's no real rhyme or reason to why we break them that way, other than if you're going to gather ideas and pick winners and reward people, it helps to have a beginning and an end. So whether it was 1 month or 3 months or 6 months or a year, it doesn't really matter much. We pick 90 days, but anything will really work. As ideas come in during that 90-day period, they're going to compete against each other within whichever one of those 5 buckets they're in. So a cost savings idea will never compete against a revenue idea, right? Only against other cost savings ideas. So in that 90-day period, ideas come in, they're shared by the crowd, and again, much like challenges, they're going to receive collaboration and rating from the crowd. And also, much like challenges, they're going to need to achieve certain things. And the hurdles are a little more difficult on this side than they are in challenges, in part because the time frame's a lot longer. Challenges run about 3 weeks. These run about 90 days. And so there's quite a bit more time for folks to achieve things, and they can get a little more support. Assuming they get the right level of crowd support, they're going to move into what we call advisor review. Now, this is quite a bit more rigorous than what a challenge is going to do. A challenge is those ideas are going to live with the executive sponsors team. And since they own the piece of the business that asks the question, they typically have the expertise to be able to go through each of those ideas and determine which ones are feasible. In an open tip format, and I'll be candid with you, this is the much more difficult part of the program to do. And the reason why some folks don't do this, because you need a team that can interface with business units all over the company. And in AT&T's environment, we are so broadly spanned in terms of products and services we offer. It really takes some work to find the right folks and make sure you can get the right feedback to determine whether or not an idea makes sense. Now, the process that's used is actually pretty straightforward once you get the right conversation going. Number one, we just want to know, is the idea in question a duplicate? And a duplicate could mean a couple things. It could mean that it's already, well, number one, most basically, it already exists, right? Maybe somebody just didn't know. Number two, if it's an idea that isn't publicly acknowledged that it exists, right? But it's on a plan of record, it's funded, it's being developed, and maybe they tell us, we're going to launch this in December. Nobody really knows about it yet because it's an item we're trying to keep quiet for now. But yeah, we've got this going. It's all taken care of, and we're making good progress. Okay, great. That's a duplicate, right? We're not going to continue to pursue that. If, on the other hand, it's not a duplicate, regardless of whether it's a good idea or not, our advisors aren't going to say it's a bad idea or it's a good idea. They're just going to say, is it something that's not already being chased by the company and hasn't already been ruled out? Then it's going to advance on to, again, that pairwise voting stage, just like it would in a challenge format. Now, where this starts to differ from a challenge is, unlike challenges where someone's going to meet with the executives, they're going to pick winners, et cetera. In this case, hopefully what we'll find is that we've got ideas that are worthy of an angel pitch. And typically it's the top 10 that come out of this. Now, the illustration I'm doing here is for the started category. Each category is a little bit different. But in the started category, they're going to go to an angel pitch. And what will happen in that case is we have a group of folks we refer to as the Angel Committee. And the Angel Committee is a group of top AT&T executives who spend time each quarter allowing our employees who have top ideas in that category to pitch their idea live via telepresence wherever they happen to be in the world to all of our execs. And the folks that are invited are people that run some of AT&T's largest business units. And so you've got the folks in the room that are in a position to be able to make something happen if it makes sense for the company. Now, I would tell you that that's probably one of the coolest things we do. I can't begin to tell you how amazing it is to watch one of our employees, maybe even one of our frontline employees that hasn't had an opportunity to even meet a lot of these folks face to face, and to have them sit there in a telepresence session, live in HD, and have a debate back and forth with, folks that you might see in AT&T's annual report on the front cover. It's amazing. It's a really, really rewarding thing. And that dialogue is so, it's conducted in such a way that it gives you, I think, a tremendous sense of pride that we have officers at our company that are humble enough to, you think about it, they run these businesses, right? So if you run the business, there's someone sitting in front of you who's telling you, I think I can make it better. And that takes a certain kind of person. It takes a humble person to sit down and listen to that and then have a dialogue with them about how you could use their idea to make your business better. So this is one of the things that has and always will make me proud to be at AT&T, that we have folks that are going to make that happen and continue to take it to the next level this way. And so again, if they're selected, our angel is going to choose to fund those ideas. And again, we'll move forward with the process of turning them into a project and seeing if we can make that happen. So I hope that helps. That's probably the most detail we're going to get into. The next thing I want to jump to quickly is just some lessons learned. And you see here, this is just a picture of our homepage, our new site. But I'd say 5 years has taught us a lot. And we've talked about a few things so far. I want to share a couple more with you. Number one, and it sounds cliche, but it's entirely true, a great idea can come from anyone. In our experience, that when we said before that one of our guiding principles was we wanted people at all levels, all experience amounts, all tenures, doesn't matter. We wanted everyone to be able to do this. We've had employees that have been here days, weeks, months that have come up with an idea that made sense for the company to pursue. We've had folks at all different levels come up with ideas that made sense to pursue. We've proven over 5 years that it really doesn't matter where you sit in the company, what you do for a day job, it makes no difference. Those ideas really can come from anyone, and a couple of these success stories I'm going to go through in a second are going to illustrate that. However, point number two is not everyone will ideate, and that's okay. I think it's easy to to think that when you stand up a platform like this, everyone's going to put ideas in. And the reality is they're not going to. But that doesn't mean they're not important. It means they're passionate about doing something else. And in our case, what we find is there's kind of two groups of people. There's folks that are heavily passionate about ideating and innovating and inventing. And there's another group of folks that's highly passionate about collaborating and voting and reviewing and helping other people. And if you look at the homepage we've redesigned, we launched a new platform, that's why you see those gigantic blue buttons at the bottom. Do you want to share an idea, or do you want to work with other people? Because while they're not mutually exclusive, and we certainly wouldn't ever say someone fits in only one bucket or the other, we do know from experience that those are very, in some ways, separate groups. And we need to make sure that we're able to recognize and reward those people, that there's opportunities for them to participate in the platform, that everyone has a chance to do what they're really passionate about. So not everybody's going to ideate, and that's okay. In our case, anecdotally, I would tell you that the split's about 70-30. About 30% of the folks identify themselves as ideators and contribute a lot of ideas, and there's about 70% that don't, about 70% that prefer and are more passionate about collaborating and reviewing and whatnot. And if you don't have that group, the ideators are kind of sitting there by themselves with not much to do. And so really, really important you include both. Innovation and process are compatible. I think, I've heard over the years folks say that innovation is the absence of process. And I think I understand what they mean by that. I get the sentiment. I think what they're really talking about is bureaucracy or maybe even overly cumbersome process. But I think what we've shown over the years is that innovation without process in some cases is just kind of having a good time. And if you're trying to generate value for an enterprise, which is where we're at, having some process that helps ensure things get out the door at the end is really the key to showing the value of having a platform like this. That being said, and along with that, a platform without a program will fail. Standing up a platform all by itself won't work. And I've seen folks do it. It's not that hard to stand up a platform. It's much more challenging to figure out a way to make it add value for your enterprise. And so that program is critical. If you haven't gone down this road, you're thinking about it, set up a platform, but make sure that you've got a commitment in terms of resources and whatnot to build a program around it. Because if I take away our ability to fund things, if I take away our ability to meet with the business units regularly, if I take those things away, our program wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as it is. So keep that in mind. Business unit partnership is critical. I think we've talked about this a couple times. I won't belabor that, but you got to be able to have a dialogue two-way with business units. Otherwise, you're going to chase the wrong stuff. And the last one, fail fast. And this is a mantra not just for us, but for our entire ecosystem and innovation organization. You try to identify early when something isn't going to work, not because it's too hard, right? There's a difference between too hard and not possible. You may find out one of your assumptions you began with wasn't correct, and if that happens, change gears, kill it, move on. Sometimes when I speak to large groups, especially if there's a lot of experts in the room, one of the things I'll ask is, raise your hand if, and you all can do this at your office right now if you like, but raise your hand if back at your company, you know that there's at least one project that virtually everyone acknowledges is maybe the silliest thing your company's ever done, and yet nobody will kill it. Raise your hands. And when I do that, somewhere between a quarter and half the hands go up. And it happens for a lot of different reasons, mostly momentum, but we're hardwired to try to be successful. We don't want to kill stuff. You want to try to prove it works. That's a good thing. Just recognize when it comes to innovation, you're going to hold yourself back if you continue to try to make things work that aren't going to work when you should be committing the resources to something else. I'm just going to take a minute or two, and we're going to go through a couple quick success stories, and then hopefully we can take a few questions. So if you have had a chance to send those through to Allie, we'll get to those in just a minute. All right. As I mentioned, these are all things that are external, so you can go read about these on your own if you like. AT&T Drive Mode is one. This is a mobile application that is available now for our customers, and The application essentially senses the fact that your vehicle is moving, and while it's moving, it allows it to block texts and phone calls. It sends an auto reply to people to let them know, hey, I'm driving, I'll get to you when I'm done, and keeps folks safe on the road when they're driving. This came from a woman by the name of Siobhan Jones, one of our frontline folks a few years back. And you can't make this stuff up, but she literally went to bed, had a dream about this concept, and woke up the next morning. Thankfully, I don't know if she's anything like me. I can't remember anything after about 30 seconds of being awake. So thankfully, she wrote it down, put it in the tip. It was a big hit, and it was turned into a mobile application after our Angel Committee funded it. So that was a great win for the program, but also a great win for the company and for our customers to create something that is able to keep folks safe while they're on the road. It later became a kind of a centerpiece of AT&T's It Can Wait campaign, our texting and driving campaign. And that campaign then has been adopted in the last year or so by a number of other groups outside of AT&T. So all in all, this is a fantastic thing to have come out of our TIP program. This next one, AT&T Toggle, again, this one's external. You can go read about this one too. It's a current offering from AT&T. But it essentially creates a secure container on a personal mobile device that allows you to do enterprise tasks like email, for example, without carrying around two phones. And this came from a gentleman by the name of Doug Ring, and his question was just, why do I have to carry around two phones? There's got to be a way to do this better, and so this was the application that was developed in response to that. So very, very cool. Out there now, you can go read a little bit more about it. This third one, AT&T Study Abroad, I mentioned this one because this is just it's a roaming package, an international roaming package, and it's geared towards students and teachers who might be traveling abroad, maybe just temporarily for an educational trip. And this came from a gentleman by the name of Fran Linnae, and Fran basically said, there's got to be a way to make this easier. Some of you have had children maybe that have traveled overseas for programs find that, you know, it can be confusing. People will go down the road of having different phones, different numbers, prepaid SIM cards, all kinds of things. And he said there's got to be a way that we can make that so that you can keep your phone, keep your phone number, keep everything, and have a plan available that you can subscribe to that's going to be able to meet your needs abroad without having to go through all those other hoops. And so I mentioned this one because it was one of the fastest things we've been able to do, and from the time it was created to the time it was available to our customers, it was only a couple of months. It was only a handful of months. And so it got there very, very quickly. And this is what I mean by the process helps, because without a process, this would still be an idea in the platform bouncing around that everybody thought was cool. And because of the process, it's out there and our customers can buy it now. So huge thing there for that. The very last one, and this one's getting a lot of press lately, is AT&T sponsored data. This was an idea from a gentleman by the name of Sam Acosta. Sam basically said, look, we have 1-800 phone numbers. Why isn't there 1-800 data? Why isn't there a way that people can use data, consume data, whether it's video or music or a mobile application, and allow a third party to take care of the data charges for them so that it doesn't use up their data allowance? This is a hot topic nowadays with as many things that consume data. And so very, very cool idea, something that we were able to release towards the beginning of this year, of 2014. And again, you can go out and read about it. There's quite a bit of information out there about it. But it's an entire platform that allows third parties now to do this and provide content without using up the user's data allowance. So very, very cool project. Like I say, that's 4 things that are out there. You can read about them since our time's limited today. And many, 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 many more that we have more time to go into them. So I hope that helps illustrate the process a little bit. And that concludes my remarks. So Allie, if you're there, happy to take a few questions if you like.
Yep, thanks, Brett. Thanks for the great presentation. And we've seen a lot of audience participation during your presentation in terms of questions. So I think at my last count, we had close to 50 questions. So we will not be able to get everyone's questions answered today, but we will make sure to provide some sort of follow-up to make sure that you get your question answered. So with the couple minutes that we have here, Brett, and while folks are still putting through some questions, thought I'd kick it off with the question, what are the future plans for the innovation program at AT&T?
That's a great question. And just to echo Allie's comments, happy to try to circle back on those things that we can't get to. I don't think we'll have time for more than just a few. So in terms of our platform, one of the things that we've started doing now, I think it's obvious from that graph, we've created this enormous pool of highly engaged people all over the globe that are passionate and excited about helping the company innovate and transform itself. That in and of itself is now a capability. That's an asset. And the question then becomes, okay, they're great at ideating. What else can they do? Because there's got to be other things we can do with 130,000 excited people. And so I'll give you one example of something we've done recently. Those of you probably familiar with the TED series, TED Talks. So we're working within the company right now to do something of a similar sort of nature where we can allow speakers within the company to share things that they're excited about, passionate about with other employees. So it's internal only, but to be able to source those things and help people choose what things make the most sense, what things they'd be excited to hear about, we've used the platform to do that. And so it's not so much gathering ideas, it's gathering, here's some people of the company that might potentially be interesting to listen to, who might have some things that are really relevant or cool for you to check out. And let's let 130,000 people decide what they'd like to hear about. Let's let them help refine those topics so they can make sure they're relevant for them. And then ultimately, let's let them pick who those people should be. So, when you've got 130,000 people, what else can you do with them? That's a good example of one thing we're doing that's not necessarily focused on ideas, but using that crowd as a powerful tool.
Great, thanks, Brett. So another question here is, can you elaborate more on pairwise voting?
Sure. So pairwise is another one. You can probably just go look it up a little bit if you'd like to see the methodology behind it. But the idea essentially is, imagine what we used to do is we'd give you this long list of ideas and say, tell us which ones you like. And that's really overwhelming, especially if I give you a list of over 100 and say, which one's the best? So what we do instead is we show you just 2. And behind the scenes, the platform selects them for you. So when you go to the site, it's going to show you just 2 ideas side by side, and it's going to ask you to click on the one that you think is the most compelling. Once you've made your selection, it's going to record that vote, and it's going to show you 2 new ones. And that process is happening live all around the world with the people that we have in the platform. And so in our case, this can be tens of thousands of votes a day just from folks all looking at these pairs. Behind the scenes, the algorithm keeps track of who's selected which one versus which other one. And by combining all that information together, it can do 2 things. Number one, it can ensure that every idea gets equal viewership. So I may not see every idea because I might not have time to look at all of them, but the system will make sure somebody sees them all an equal number of times. So from a fairness perspective, it's good. Sure beats the heck out of a list. The second thing is that it's going to go through and sort and order all of those and rank them based on the feedback it's getting from everybody. So it's taking that collective intelligence and creating an end product instead of individual little pieces. So very, very simple. Which one do you like better, A or B? You make your choice. It gives you a couple of more, and you can keep doing that until the number of pairs has been exhausted. If there's 5 or 10 ideas, that could be pretty quickly. If there's 200 or 300 ideas, that could take quite a long time. So that's why it's important to allow everyone to kind of work together to get through that process of voting. It's been very, very successful for us.
Thanks, Brett. Again, to the group, so many good questions coming through here. We probably only have time for 1 or 2 more. So, Brett, how did you manage the volume of ideas as it grew so large?
That's a great question. Well, in part, we had a little bit of an ace in the hole in that as we added additional categories, we added additional stakeholders, right? So, when we added the cost savings group, for example, recently, we also came with that folks in the CFO organization, the finance organization, who that's part of their job. To go through all of those ideas that come in, vet them. They've got the financial information necessary to determine whether or not they could, in fact, save money available at their fingertips, right? It's right there in their organization. And so I certainly wouldn't want to make it sound like it's easy for them because I know it's not. There's a lot of work. But it's the right group to help determine which things make sense. And so that's part of it. I think you get the right stakeholders involved, you get the right people helping, that, you know, tens of thousands of ideas starts breaking down into little buckets and being parceled off to different folks that can do the work and do it quickly and efficiently. That's a huge help. Another thing we've done is leveraged folks who aren't even necessarily part of our direct team. You know, we have a partnership with our talent management organization as a company. And that talent management organization, one of the things they do is develop new leaders, young leaders for the company. And part of that process involves helping them get exposed to other pieces of the business. You know, maybe they kind of grew up, so to speak, in finance, and they want to learn more about another part of the company. One of the ways that we can do that is we partnered with them to say, hey, why don't we utilize some of those folks to help lead an innovation project that maybe is a mobile application, maybe something they haven't done before. Or why don't we use them to help us do some of the research on ideas from a due diligence perspective to determine if, you know, if they should be cleared for advisory review or not. So there's a lot of ways that we try to leverage people outside of our group, because headcount is only ever going to get so big. And those of you that are sitting there shaking your head right now know exactly what I mean. Budget time's coming here soon for people in large companies, and it's always a hot topic, headcount. So I think you have to get creative. I think you have to think beyond the headcount. I think you have to ask yourself, you know, hey, there's all these things that need to be looked at, all these things that need to be done. Are there people in the company that not only could do that, but that would benefit from it? And I think the answer is yes. And you just have to find the right people. So get the right stakeholders, get them involved. You know, don't make them spectators, let them do it. And then find a way to get creative with other people that might be interested in helping.
Thanks, Brett. And I think that will be our last question for today. However, I did want to mention, as we've received multiple comments, will the slides be available? Will the recording be available? That yes, the recording will be available on mindjet.com. You know, shortly following this webinar, we'll get working on it to make sure that you're able to see that the recording of the webinar. Additionally, if you're interested in learning more about AT&T's use case or any of our other Spigit Engage customers, please click the link here, Spigit Engage Success Stories. I also sent it along in the chat window for this group. Additionally, if you want more information on Spigit Engage, we have another link here that will take you to information such as data sheets and anything else that you'd like to look at, videos, etc., to learn more about the Spigit Engage platform. I also sent that along in the chat window. So Brett, again, thank you for a great presentation. We've seen many wonderful comments from our audience. And audience, if we weren't able to get to your question today, we'll make sure to take an offline response and find out a way to answer your question for you. So hopefully everyone has a good afternoon and evening, and thank you for joining.